With that in mind, let's bring in our next guest. He is national security analyst Ryan Mauro. Ryan Skyping in this morning from New Jersey. Ryan, we thank you for your time, and we appreciate you being here on America's Forum.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Ryan, the Pentagon launched a mission in Yemen last month, failing to rescue Mr. Summers. Was this really the best chance, maybe the only chance they had to rescue this hostage?
I won't say only, because if they were able to launch this mission in the first place, that means that we have pretty good on-the-ground intelligence tracking Al-Qaeda's branch in Yemen. So there's always hope, but Al-Qaeda's branch in Yemen hasn't given us much time to work with before they execute this poor American.
And not only have they not given our nation much time, they've not given us any specific notion of what they're after. What are they looking for? Money? Other concessions? Do you have any idea?
Well, they did make some generic criticisms of American foreign policy like they always do, but what they said was that our demands are well known, which means they didn't want to say it. So that may mean that they're trying to get money. On a broader level, I think they're trying to out-ISIS ISIS, because Al-Qaeda's branch in Yemen is very powerful, but they generally stay away from this type of high-profile thing. But they, just like other branches of Al-Qaeda, are trying to take some of the attention away from ISIS and show that they are still viable and the big guys in town.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Ryan, you use that phrase, trying to out-ISIS ISIS. With that in mind, does that set up a kind of escalation of brutality between and among these different Islamo-fascist terror groups?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. You have Boko Haram in Nigeria that's trying to mimic ISIS as much as possible. They haven't actually crossed the line into declaring allegiance to ISIS because Boko Haram in Nigeria is still an Al-Qaeda affiliate, and so they don't want to alienate either side, but they want to move as closely as they can to the Islamic State as possible. In terms of propaganda, you have the Al-Qaeda chief, Ayman al-Zawahiri, saying, "No, my caliphate is better, come fight with me." So you have kind of like a caliphate race going on.
And mindful of that, is there ever a situation where that kind of competition can turn into these different groups going after each other rather than directing their focus on Americans and their, I guess we'd say, their traditional announced enemies?
Oh, definitely. One of the traditional signs that a terrorist group is losing and is on its way out is when it starts fracturing and its members start killing each other. One of the advantages we have is that extremists, by their very nature, kill each other over relatively minor things. And so infighting can be a very good thing for us, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. When it comes to fighting us, they'll cooperate. Iran and Al-Qaeda, for example, they cooperate in some areas at the same time as killing each other in Syria.
Well, and as you mentioned this, it seems to me, and obviously we talked about a hostage rescue, and obviously we want to rescue Americans, but it would seem an effective strategy is to set up some sort of internal situation that would prompt these different factions to battle each other. Is that about a minute left here, is that a viable strategy? Do you think we have some sort of fifth column trying to work on this?
I wouldn't be surprised if we did. I would assume that not just us, but Arab intelligence services and different intelligence services want to do that kind of thing. It's very common sense. It's easy to cause these fissures. So that's very effective. But we've also got to work with our allies in stamping them out. Nigeria, for example, just canceled the American training program of its military to fight Boko Haram. So we've got to find better partners.
And speaking of those allied partners and those who oppose us, it's almost as if we need to have a scorecard. Ryan Mauro, we're going to step aside for a couple of minutes. When we come back, we'll talk more about Boko Haram and these other groups, what distinguishes them, what may make them the same, and what the implications are for our own national security. There's more ahead here on America's Forum. You stay with us. Rejoining us to discuss Boko Haram and the growth of Islamofascism in Africa, national security analyst Ryan Mauro. Ryan, if you could encapsulate the situation in Africa right now, how would you sum it up?
Simply very unstable, obviously, many human rights issues, but when it comes to Islamic terrorism, they're gaining a foothold. Boko Haram has declared a caliphate in northern Nigeria. We never hear about that. We hear about ISIS's caliphate over 1/3 of Iraq and Syria, but we never hear about the Boko Haram caliphate in northern Nigeria.
And speaking of Boko Haram, you spoke earlier of the Nigerian military stepping away from training from American troops. Is Nigeria basically trying to pacify, to appease Boko Haram?
Yes, the Nigerian government is openly negotiating with them. It wasn't that long ago that they were talking with someone that they thought was a leader of Boko Haram, even though there was no evidence to suggest that. And they announced this wonderful deal where there would be a ceasefire and the 200 girls that were kidnapped would be released. And it turned out that no one knew of any evidence this guy was with Boko Haram, and the deal never happened. So you're dealing with a tremendous amount of incompetence, just a lack of information. It's bigger than just the military refusing to fight. You're talking about a government that just doesn't know what it's doing.
Incompetence or ideology, because the 200 girls, Christians, the question becomes the whole notion of faith and different faiths. The fact that these were Christian girls, did that likewise encourage elements of the Nigerian government to perhaps just say, well, we couldn't get this done, whether it's a swindle or not, we're not going to get back involved? In other words, is Islam ascendant in Africa to the point where Christian persecution will be countenanced by governments such as the government of Nigeria?
I think to some degree that's already true because there is so much Christian persecution. As for the Nigerian government, Boko Haram is kidnapping and brutalizing Muslims left and right. Only 2% of the Muslims in Nigeria have a favorable opinion of Boko Haram. So I think that this is more indicative of the Nigerian government kind of stepping away from tackling Boko Haram as a whole, regardless of whether the victim is Christian or Muslim.
As we continue to monitor what happens in Africa, and certainly we never want to in any way disparage what I'll call the human equation and human rights. But the fact is, Africa, places like Nigeria, vast oil reserves, and again, traditionally people think of the Middle East and their oil, but there is significant energy and natural resources in Nigeria. Economically, for the future of Boko Haram, is that something that terrorists want to get their hands on?
Oh, you better believe it. All of those resources are something that they keep close track of. And one of the very frequent themes that you hear from jihadists is that basically oil is God's gift to them, that they are supposed to have it and it's their way of essentially conquering the world. So they think they have a religious obligation to get a hold of those resources in order to threaten us with. And the issue of Boko Haram does go beyond the human rights issue because it has declared a violent jihad on the U.S. They're just doing the ISIS strategy where they're focusing on getting a base from which they can project power throughout the region and against us. But you better believe they have said that they are at war with democracy, with the United States, and with Christianity.
Mindful of that, the next defense secretary is stepping into a daunting task. The ceremony, perhaps going on right now at the White House, the official designation of Ashton Carter as the next Secretary of Defense, of course, subject to Senate approval and confirmation. About 45 seconds, your take on Ashton Carter.
There's concern that because he doesn't have military experience, that he's not the right man for the job, but I've only heard positive things about him. He has a reputation as a real hawk, recommending the bombing of North Korea twice. And he's also been critical of some of the things that Obama has done. So you may be able to interpret this as a subtle recognition by President Obama that things haven't quite gone the way he had hoped.
Yeah, and perhaps also the fact that a lot of people did not want the job besides Ashton Carter. We heard a lot of people said no thanks to that particular role to play. National security analyst Ryan Mauro, we're very pleased that you're very much on the job, Skyping in today from the Garden State of New Jersey with your take on what is going on in Africa vis-a-vis Islamofascism and what may happen in Washington with a new defense secretary by the name of Ashton Carter. America's Forum continues right after this.